Welcome to Notes from a Drama Watcher, a podcast about East Asian dramas. It's part recap, part review, and there will definitely be spoilers ahead. Welcome to episode 44 of Notes from a Drama Watcher. This is your host, M. Welcome if you are new, and welcome back if you've been here before. In this episode, we're going to talk about High School Frenemy episodes 1 through 8. High School Frenemy actually came out last year. I didn't get the chance to watch it last year because I was just watching so many things. And so I decided to wait on it and I watched it this year. So before we start, just a little kind of backstory. I actually finished watching High School Frenemy probably about a month ago, and I've just had this kind of like podcaster block where I just had so many thoughts about this show. So much I wanted to say that I couldn't figure out where I was gonna start or if I was gonna try to do the whole series in one episode or break it into two episodes. So anyway, ultimately I've decided to break it into two episodes. And of course, right when I thought about recording, I actually got sick. So if my voice doesn't sound great, I apologize, but I really just wanted to get this recording out already because I just feel like I have so much to say about this show. So, as I said, I only finished a few weeks ago. I started watching it in January. I'm actually happy that I didn't watch it back when it first came on because I was able to give it my full attention. This show stars Sky as Saint and Nani as Shin. I did not actually know Nani before this. I have not seen F4, so I didn't know from there. I haven't seen Homeschool. I have slowly started watching Homeschool to see how he is. So I'm kind of working backwards as far as his career goes. Sky, I had seen without fully realizing. It's funny because I saw Spare Me Your Mercy, which stars Tor, and for some reason just did not recognize that Sky was also in Spare Me Your Mercy. He just looks so different because he's much younger and his body was very different at the time, so it just didn't connect. And then I also read that he was in My Ambulance, which sounded familiar to me. And I was like, why don't I remember him from My Ambulance? And then I actually have gone back and watched My Ambulance and realized the reason I don't remember Sky is because I never finished that show. It's because, quite frankly, I found the main leads to be quite annoying. Sky was not, he was main lead, one of the main leads, but he was the second male lead. But the male and female main lead characters I found annoying, so I just dropped the show. Now that I've gone back and watched years later, I don't mind her as much, the female lead on that show, because I feel that her character grows, but I just never liked the male lead all the way until the end. So anyway, that's my explanation why I should have recognized Sky, but did not. But now I realize that I have seen him in other things. Realized, I think I said that Sky was in Spare Me Your Mercy. It's not Spare Me Your Mercy that I was thinking of. He was with Tor in Project S Side by Side years ago. He was a teen at the time. So, High School Frenemy, let me just give you a little background for anyone who hasn't seen it. This is from my drama list. When Simwat School faces financial struggles, Administrator Papada decides to merge the Udon Pitak campus with the main campus, Tep Burapa, despite their long-standing rivalry. What no one knows is that Saint, played by Sky, is a member of, he's a classmate in the main campus. Shin is from the new campus who is merging with the main campus. They were friends, childhood friends, all the way up to middle school. Something big happened between them. They are no longer friends. They haven't seen each other in years. And this is the first time they're being reunited in years. And they have no idea. Saint realizes first that Shin is coming, but Shin is just completely blindsided to find himself encountering Saint after all this time. Episode 1 opens up with the character Saint, played by Sky, as a delivery boy, and we see In certain ways, he's someone with nerves of steel because he gets recruited to help someone escape from some gang that's chasing him, and he just goes with the flow as long as he's being paid the money and doesn't seem like really scared or anything by it. In the next scene, we see a bunch of kids from rival schools looking like they're about to play basketball, but instead getting into a fist fight. One side is led by other male lead Shin. The other side is by the character Ken, who is played by Kay. All this fighting sets the tone for the next several episodes and indeed the rest of the show. There are a lot of characters in the show, and they introduce them fairly quickly in episode one. We don't know much about Shin yet, except that his mom seems quite exasperated with his fighting. It seems like this is an ongoing problem. Saint, as far as we can see so far, looks like a good, young, upstanding man, upstanding citizen, hard worker who works to make money for school, and all the while dealing with a father who has an obvious drinking problem. We next meet see a teacher meeting where they're discussing the merging of the two schools that have had a 16-year-long rivalry. We do learn over the course of the show what is the reason behind the rivalry between the campuses. And you see by the 16-year rivalry that all the fighting that Shin and the classmates are doing is not really from them. It's just like a carryover of years and years of problems between the two campuses because of what happened 16 years before. You just know that there's going to be a rough road ahead based on how the teachers and administration are talking and warning the new people. There's a new teacher called Kunjan, Miss Jan, who Saint meets. That's how we see him working with that he's working at his dad's noodle truck and everything. So they met even before he realized that she's his homeroom teacher in the school. We also see a little bit, as far as Saint goes, of a workout scene with Saint, and it's not just filler. There's a reason they show this, and it's to show that he's someone who's physically fit and strong and takes care of himself. And this is important because even though he looks big, he is physically big, he's a big guy. But even though we know he's strong and everything like that, he's not one of the people getting into all the fights on campus. He's just minding his business, basically. We also meet Chajen, another character, another important character. He's played by Mark, and he's someone who unfortunately we see being bullied by Ken and crew. Saint sees this happening and does intervene. He does not intervene by fighting. He's just basically telling Ken, just leave this guy alone, whatever. He gives Ken some money to leave him alone, and he takes Chajen away. So we see basically at his core, he seems like he's a good guy. It seems, as we're watching, that Shin is the more troubled of the two male leads, though we do see a soft spot that he has, and that is his little sister Ching Ching. Saint does not seem as troubled. He doesn't deliberately get into fights. He tries to mind his own business. But at the first meeting with Shin, we see that they have a history together and that there is deep emotional pain between them. Whatever it was must have been really bad since Shin, over the course of the next few episodes, just basically is like refusing to have anything to do with Saint. And Saint just really wants to get Shin to talk to him, and Shin is just not only is he refusing, but he's outright telling Shin that he hates him. Um, I'm gonna digress here for just a second. I actually started recording this episode before, and it had technical difficulties and it cut off. So High School Frenemy actually came out at the end of last year, and I didn't get the chance to watch it because I was just watching so many other things, and I decided to wait, and so I didn't watch it until the beginning of this year. I actually did finish it a few weeks ago, was debating making a whole episode about it or if I should split episodes because I had almost like a podcaster block. And the reason for the podcaster block was this: I have so many thoughts about this show. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to say. And of course, when I finally decided, okay, I'm just going to record and whatever whatever comes out, I got sick. So if you hear my voice cracking and whatever during this, please bear with me. I just really wanted to finally just get my thoughts out about this show and just stop holding off on recording. I just have so many thoughts on so many levels about this show, not just about the main characters, but about the other characters in the show, the side. I don't even know if I can call them side characters because I feel there were several stories that were really developed here, even though Saint and Shin are the main focus. So anyway, back to the show. So that's episodes 1 and 2, where we get to kind of meet everyone. In the beginning of episode 4, we see, not the beginning, well, near the beginning, we see that Shin is walking with his sister Ching Ching. She spots Saint, and they have this very cute, adorable reunion between Saint and Ching Ching. And if we didn't know they were close before, like we know now for sure that Saint was a part of Shin's life, his family life. Like even his family knew him. And Ching Ching basically considers him another big brother of hers. The joy that they both show upon seeing each other again is just so sweet. This the closeness we see is important because it allows us also to see Saints in protective mode. And going back to talking about how he was working out in the beginning, and we know that he is physically strong, we get to see it now. So previous to him meeting Ching Ching again, there were fights in school between the different factions trying to gain dominance. This is all through episodes, like 1 through 3. And through it all, Saint stays out of it, does not engage in the fights, and in fact, he looks bored or annoyed when the fights break out. And you never get the sense that he's afraid of his own safety in any way. He just like backs off. People are swinging at him, and he's dodging and ducking and not fighting back. But even with the dodging and ducking, you can see he's quick on his feet. He just doesn't want to get involved in any way. But it all comes to a head in episode 4. Something happens to Shin. Shin is in trouble. He doesn't have the ability to get to his sister, and he knows his sister's in trouble. But he knows that Saint knows that Ching Ching is in trouble. And even though he's saying he hates Saint and that Saint is not his friend, he knows he's got deep faith that if Saint figures out that Ching Ching is in trouble, that Saint is going to go and protect her. And that's exactly what happens. And this is how we get to see Saint's true physical abilities and know if he really wanted to hurt the people in school, he could. He definitely could. And he knows he has this capacity for violence in himself. And that's why he is holding back as much as he does. In fact, he says at one point, it's been 3 years since he hurt someone. And we see through the flashbacks and everything, the person that he hurt 3 years ago was Shin. And whatever happened between them was the cause for their breakup. I don't know any other term to use it. This is to use here. This is not a BL, but these two are definitely soulmates, platonic soulmates. So a breakup is like the only way I can think of to describe their separation for 3 years from each other. Even now, even though Shin has this ultimate faith in Saint, it's still not enough to bring them together. There's still too much emotional pain between them. So much time has passed. Shin is just really, really hurt. Saint is like begging for his attention. He wants them to get back together platonically. Like I said, it's not a BL, it's a bromance. But Shin is not ready yet. Shin is not ready to forgive him. In episode 5, we see the reason that Shin was in trouble and couldn't get to his sister when she needed his help is that there's a gang leader named Jang who has it out for Shin. We get to see the reason that he has it out for Shin, and Chad Jen knows all about this reason and asks Saint to protect Shin, which of course, as Saint is saying, like he doesn't know if Shin's gonna accept his protection. And Shin again is like, I hate you, don't want anything to do with you. But this is a little bit of it's not a turning point necessarily for them, but this is Saint coming out and being like, I love you. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to try to be here for you, whether you like it or not. I'm just going to keep trying. And Shin is just kind of like, doesn't know what to say, is in a little bit of shock because he's saying, I hate you. And just Satan is saying, I love you. And again, it's not a BL, it's a bromance. For those of you who think you only watch BLs, don't let that be the reason to stop you from watching this. Please take a chance on High School Frenemy. I haven't even finished first episode where I'm talking about the show. And I'm already telling you basically what I think is to go ahead and watch it, even if you're someone who only watches BL. This is almost a BL. There's more I love yous in this show than I think in a typical BL that you would watch. Episode 6 has one of my favorite scenes in a way, and it's not any super dramatic scene, but we realize, or you've realized, you may have realized if you've reached this point, that what happened between Shin and Saint was that Saint did something violent towards Shin, and that's, again, as I said before, the reason that Saint has sort of vowed to himself not to do any more violent things. It's the reason he doesn't get involved in fights or commit violence. He somehow hurt Shin. And you realize, or I, at least when I was watching, I realized that it looks like he hurt his leg. I like at this point I was already thinking, oh, I think he broke his leg. And Shin was someone who was very into soccer. It was a dream of his to play soccer. So that, I mean, someone breaking your leg is a big thing anyway, but especially where his dreams hinged on being healthy. And so we've already seen at this point, because of some things that happened, that he had this injury and it still affects him. And we can guess that it was most likely Saint that did it to him. And there's a scene where Ken and his crew are looking to fight Shin, and Saint convinces Shin to leave from the back of the school instead of passing by them so that he doesn't get into a fight with them. But in order to be able to get out of the school, he has to climb over a wall. And Saint and Shin are sitting on the top of this wall, and you see Shin is just having second thoughts and concerns about jumping down from this wall because it's very high. And sad music kicks in, and Saint is looking at his leg very guiltily. And it's just such an impressive scene to me for some reason. Like, there's not a lot of talking, but just the music, Saint's puppy dog face, the vulnerability that Shin is feeling at that moment, you can really see on his face. And to think the person he's being vulnerable in front of is the person who caused the injury in the first place. But it's also someone who, if he could lift him up and carry him off the wall, he would do that for him. It's just such an interesting, quiet moment. And the music was perfect for it. The music, as I was watching this show as a whole, the OST is really good in this show. And I almost view the songs as like another character on the show. And to be honest, in certain ways, even though it has nothing to do with each other, it sort of reminded me of Not Me with Gun and Off. And even though that one was, that was a BL, whatever, but the importance of the OST on that show, I can see reflected on this show. I actually didn't look to see if it was like the same person choosing the music or anything like that it could be, I don't know. But like I said, the music in this show is like another character. They picked some really good songs. They come in at the right moment, whether it's just an instrumental or songs with words or whatever. A lot of the songs were English, so I've got that sort of biased word because I could understand what they were saying. But even when it was just an instrumental, it was it was chosen very well, and the music became its own character. So interesting to me that that Saint is named Saint. And they open with him being so helpful with his dad, showing him being a hard worker, helping someone escape. But now, when we get to episode 6 and 7, we find out the truth that there was a time in his life when he did something terrible to his closest friend, right? He broke his leg. Or I believed at this point he broke his leg. And Shin, who in the first episode looked just like a troublemaker getting into fights in the basketball court and everything, turns out to be a very protective friend who takes care of his little sister and who counts Chad Jen as one of his closest friends. Someone who would have been even more mercilessly bullied in school than he is now, than the problems he is having now. Um, Chad Jen, they don't say specifically what is going on with him, but he appears to be someone who's possibly on the spectrum. They never fully say, but he's someone who, I don't want to say that Shin is taking him under his wing. I guess in a certain sense he has, because he stood up for him and everything like that. But that's when they first met. Chad Jen is in one of their friend group, is part of their friend group, and is one of the most important characters on the show. Quite honestly, I don't know how quickly Saint and Shin would have even been talking to each other if it wasn't for Chad Jen's intervention. He actually just he became one of my favorite characters on the show because I think he was important emotional support for them when we see them on the show, but also probably a lot for Shin in scenes that we did not see on the show, parts of his life that we didn't see on the show. Things come to a head between them in episode 7 between Saint and Shin when rumors spread in the school about Shin, about that he's part of a gang or whatever. And this all goes back to Jang, who I mentioned earlier, who's the leader of the gang, who has it in for Shin. People think that Shin and him have some connection when really there's no connection in the sense that doesn't want anything to do with Jang. He'd be perfectly happy to never see Jang. Jang is the one who's going after Shin all the time. But rumors spread in the school that Shin has something to do with gangs. And of course, this concerns Saint. He doesn't want Shin getting expelled because now there's talk of expulsion for Shin, that since he might be part of a gang. And this just causes even more tension between them. Shin tries even more to push Saint away. There's a scene where they get into a scuffle and they inadvertently hurt Miss Jan, their teacher. And you see again what we already know, that Shin is not a bad guy. He instantly feels very bad that he in any way hurt Miss Jan. He's just feeling really pressured by Saint's desperation to be forgiven by him. But, honestly, the reality is you cannot force forgiveness. Saint can try and try, but Shin doesn't have to forgive him. That's just life. It's up to the wronged party to decide whether they're going to grant forgiveness or not. We got the hints earlier. Like I said, I realized up until here, I had realized already that it looks like Saint broke Shin's leg, and Saint finally does admit that is what happened. He broke Shin's leg when Shin tried to leave the gang that Saint was the leader of in middle school. He admits all of this so that in front of other people, so that they'll realize that Shin is not a bad person. He's just someone who was very wronged and is obviously understandably upset. And, he doesn't want Shin getting kicked out of school. Shin also doesn't want to be in school in a certain sense. He wants to be in school, but he doesn't want to be around Saint because Saint's really exerting all this pressure, trying to get him to forgive him and to be friends with him again. It finally comes to a head again. Shin is like, I'm not gonna go back to school. Like I don't you are always pressuring me, you're always there. Like I don't want to see you. And he says to Saint, you took away the most important thing in my life, which was, Shin wanting to become a soccer player, a professional soccer player. And he's telling Saint, if you give something up that's equally important, I'll consider coming back. And Saint does decide to give up something important, which what he does is he decides to drop out of school. And that's, again, the music and everything. The end of episode 7, where he's telling Shin, Shin is like, why are you dropping out of school? That's your most important thing? Like, are you serious? And of course, that's not Saint's most important thing. His most important thing is Shin. And excuse me, I'm sorry, my voice is giving out, as I said. Um, his most important thing is Shin, and that's what he's giving up. He's giving up the chance to just be around Shin, to be in his orbit, to breathe the same air as Shin. His whole focus in life is Shin. And the end of that episode, you just see Saint walking away from Shin, and Shin is not happy, right? You would think he would be like, oh, yes, he's finally going to leave me alone. No, he's devastated. Saint is devastated because he doesn't get to be around Shin anymore. And Shin is devastated because Saint is leaving him. And I was thinking before this, I was thinking he broke his leg, but you also see Saint wanted to see Shin in the hospital. He looks into the room, but he never goes in, and Shin gets like so upset. And I'm sorry, excuse me. And I was like, I think what hurts Shin more is that Saint left. He left him. It's not the broken leg. Yeah, the broken leg bothered him, but it was the fact that Saint abandoned him. And at the end of episode 7, when Saint is walking away, you can see it's like Shin is probably thinking he's walking away again. He's leaving me again. And episode 8 is basically everyone trying to get Saint to come back to school because obviously no one wants someone to drop out of school. It affects their whole future, especially he's so close to graduation. And Shin is going to have to make a decision, right? He's going to have to decide. I don't know if he has to decide at that point to forgive Saint necessarily, but he's going to have to decide that he can at least accept Saint in his presence and accept that Saint is going to want to talk to him if he wants Saint to be able to come back to school and finish school because Shin also wants Saint to graduate. Like, no one wants to think that they're the reason someone's dropping out of school. So, episode 8 is just them trying to get Saint back to school and get some kind of understanding between Saint and Shin so that they can start some kind of friendship, some kind of understanding between each other. We don't know yet whether they're going to be able to rekindle the tight found family bond that they had before, but episode 8 is kind of a turning point. Um, where we think maybe, finally, we think maybe we'll get there. And I've actually been watching, I've noticed more and more Western reactors have now been reacting to High School Frenemy. And it's interesting watching some of them because something about this show really makes you so invested in this relationship. You're really sad for Saint before you know exactly what the story is between them. Then you're really sad for Shin because you know that his dreams were destroyed in a sense. And then you realize you're really sad for both of them because they really, really need to be together. They are obviously soulmates. Some people read this show as a BL just because of the way that they talk to each other, the way they are with each other. I don't know where I fall on that. I think you can have friendships that are not romantic soulmates necessarily. And so I'm fine with it being a bromance. Whatever you want to call it, they are soulmates and you are totally rooting for them to get back together by the time you get to episodes 7 where you fully discover the truth at episode 8 where you're just wanting them to talk to each other and to get back together in some way. So, I'm just really enjoying the show, the whole thing behind the show. I've fallen down this Sky-Nani rabbit hole where I'm watching all these TikToks and videos. I know they've got a show Woo that's supposed to be coming out. It was part of GMMTV's 2025 lineup. I'd be very surprised if it came out in 2025. I'm thinking more 2026 just because they've been so busy. They're getting so many brand deals and scholarship and sponsorships and whatever. I don't even think they have time to be recording a show right now. So maybe 2026 we'll see them. And I know people are desperate for them to do a BL. I don't know how I feel about that. If they did a BL, awesome. I think they've got amazing chemistry. But I don't know how comfortable they are doing that. So if it's another bromance, that's fine with me because I know that their chemistry is good and the acting is going to be good. And if we get the kind of chemistry that we see in High School Frenemy, it's fine with me if it's another bromance. So that's it for today. Thanks for listening to me ramble. I'm glad my voice has lasted until this point. My next episode, I'll be talking about episodes 9 through 16 of High School Frenemy. If my voice lasts, I may also talk about Study Group, which was a Korean drama, also about high school students, that I started watching after High School Frenemy because I was in a mode of watching high school shows, which is funny because I don't normally watch high school shows, but I was like, oh, let me see. I'm in the high school show mood now. Let me see if how this compares to High School Frenemy because I saw that it was also people fighting, but it turns out it was completely different. And that's not in a bad way. That is also a very good show if if you're looking for something to watch. And that one only has 8 episodes actually. It's based off of a webtoon. So if I've got a voice And if I've got time, I'll talk about that one a little bit more in the next episode when I follow up on High School Frenemy. So thanks again for listening to me ramble. If you have any suggestions on shows or have any thoughts about this, about High School Frenemy, you can send me an email at dramawatchernotes@gmail.com. I am also on Blue Sky and Twitter. Honestly, probably more on Blue Sky nowadays. It's Notes from a Drama Watcher. Thanks again for listening. Take care.